If you're new to SPSS syntax and you find it all a bit bewildering, then rest assured that there is plenty of help available. This is a very well documented command language, and there's a lot of online help available, including official and unofficial help. And it makes sense just to spend a very short period of time before we get into the syntax itself, just familiarizing yourself with how do you find out how to apply the syntax, what the different functions are available and how do you make sense of them. So the first place to look perhaps is the online reference guide. You may recall that we had these big manuals that people used to print out or buy copies of in the 1970s and 1980s. And they would look up procedures in those manuals. This is basically an online version of that. It details every single SPSS syntax command. And if you were to look up a particular command, a particular procedure, such as crosstabs or frequencies or correlations on this reference guide, you'd find that it gave you an overview explaining what the different elements are within that procedure, what that procedure did. It would give you, very importantly, examples of how to apply it. And it would also give you a breakdown or a description of the procedure in the form of a syntax diagram or a syntax map, if you like, which might look a little bit bewildering to begin with, but it shows the different elements within that procedure. Before we have a deeper look at that, let's just click on this reference here, this link to the command reference guide, and that opens up the IBM web page. You can see it yourself. It says command syntax reference is arranged alphabetically by command name to provide quick access to detailed information. So you can just scroll down through these. You can see all these different procedures here, lots and lots of different procedures. So for example, here if I look at correlations, it shows me an overview of the correlations procedure. It shows me examples of correlations procedure. Here's examples, and gives me information about all of the individual subcommands and keywords within that procedure. Very useful, very powerful. If we go back to the slides here, in terms of these diagrams themselves, you notice that they have a certain kind of formatting, and you mustn't be put off by that. It's not that complicated. First of all, words in uppercase indicate that these are keywords. These are the actual elements of the procedure itself, the functional bits of it. In many ways, they map back to the boxes and radio buttons that you tick in a dialog box. If you want to check, for example, a box that says, give me a bar chart, it'd usually be an uppercase word or a subcommand said bar chart for that. Lowercase text indicates it's something that you, the user, have to provide. So it's usually a variable name or a value that you're entering. Text in bold indicates default settings. So text in bold indicates default settings. In fact, there are two types of default. When the default is followed by a double asterisk, such as a value, double asterisk, which you get in the frequency syntax. A value just means ascending values, the order in which the values appear in the table. That just means it's used even if the subcommand / format is not specified. So it's kind of like a hard default, an overall global default. And it's just showing you that even if you don't specify it, I'm going to use this default. Things like parentheses and apostrophes and quotation marks indicate that the element is required. It has to be put in there. Text in square brackets indicates that they are optional. You don't have to put them in. And anything within braces, the curly brackets, indicates that there's a choice. You can have more than one element within that, or you can choose one element within it. And ellipses just indicate that you can have multiple elements in there. So you often get ellipses after the word var list, meaning that you can list lots of different variable names in there, more than one. So it's not that complicated when you start looking at this the syntax diagram. And if you are bewildered, then have a look at an example and copy and paste the example out and then just change the field names around. That's a good way to learn. Another really good way to familiarize yourself is to make use or exploit, if you like, the autocomplete function when you're manually typing syntax. If you can't remember exactly all of the different elements within crosstabs, or even necessarily how crosstabs is spelled, if you start guessing it and just typing CRO, you'll find that it anticipates that, and the autocomplete function kicks in and it shows you all the different commands that you could put in, which is really useful. The second thing is that even if you put a slash after that, it then tries to anticipate which subcommands you could have. So for example, frequencies is some subcommands. You can have a bar chart, you could have a pie chart, you could have a histogram, you can ask for percentiles, that type of stuff. So it's really powerful and a good way to explore the different elements that you could put in at that point. And also really, really useful is the ability to quickly look up the syntax diagram for a particular procedure. If you just highlight that procedure, for example, here we've got crosstabs. If you highlight that and then click the button marked syntax help here, this little button, it immediately jumps to that part of the command syntax reference guide. So you can see all of the different options associated with crosstabs. Really useful. Let's just demonstrate that by jumping out to syntax here. I'll just demonstrate it using, say, a descriptives procedure. So if I type in DES, you can see immediately it starts to anticipate the descriptives procedure, and I can just hit the enter key, so it immediately pastes it in for me. Don't have to type it all. And then if I type the name of a field like age, see it comes up there. If I want to look it up, I can just highlight it, of course, click my little button here. It takes me to an overview of the descriptive procedures. So you can see all these different procedures. See, the default here is mean, the minimum, standard deviation. A non-default is the range meaning the difference between the minimum value and the maximum value. It's just the range of values. So, you know, if I wanted to explore that a little bit further, if I just jump back to the syntax window here and then put a slash after that, you can see it says, okay, here's the statistics that you can have. Go over here, and if I start to guess that, let's just put, didn't it say default or something like that? I type D. Oh, there you go. Let's see this default. You can almost guess just by typing one letter in. So if I go, what was it? Was it range? Type in R. So there it is, this range comes up. And then, of course, the rule is it must be followed by a full stop. We put a full stop in. The descriptives keyword turns dark blue, so we know that we've completed command. And we can just highlight that and run that, and gives us descriptives for the procedure age. Okay, in the next section we're going to look at some specific syntax procedures. And we've picked these because we think they're pretty useful ones. We're not going to go through every single analytical procedure. We're just picking a whole bunch of procedures that you can run in syntax, which are kind of illustrative, if you like, of the power of syntax, and will give you a sense of how you can exploit syntax to make good use of it in your own work.